they were your all-American family. This is something, I mean, I could live 100,000 lifetimes and never expect this out of that.
I could have never imagined that ever in my whole entire life, you know? And I'm still in shock.
By all accounts, the Candy family looked like the perfect example of the American dream. But if there's one thing we've learned from true crime stories, it's that sometimes, behind those picture-perfect lives, is a dark secret nobody saw coming.
What happened in that residence was nothing short of a massacre. Those children were hunted down and killed after the woman was killed.
On April 22, 2024, a 10-year-old boy woke up in his Yukon, Oklahoma home, only to discover something no child should ever face. His 3 older brothers and both his parents were all found dead. What makes this case even more heartbreaking is that everyone who knew the Candy family saw them as the ideal household. They were loved in the community, always active in local events, and even shared sweet moments on TV. In one local show, Discover Oklahoma, they even talked about their favorite pastries with smiley faces.
I come here twice a week in the morning just for their breakfast burritos, which are by far anything better than you can get around here. I love the carrot cake. I don't eat a lot of sweets, even with my last name, but I love the carrot cake.
I like the cannoli. The cannoli are good.
As you've seen, the Candy family looked like they had it all. But behind those smiling photos and cheerful TV appearances was a truth no one could have predicted. Their story would soon turn into one of the most heartbreaking and twisted massacres in Oklahoma history. But before we dive into the grim details of what happened, it's important to understand who the Candy family really was. As we've mentioned earlier, the Candy family had long been considered the model of the ideal American family. From the outside, they seemed to have it all: 2 loving parents, 4 bright and active sons, and a picture-perfect life in their peaceful Yukon, Oklahoma neighborhood. Their family photos captured warm smiles and happy moments, weekend outings, school events, family dinners. Friends and neighbors spoke highly of them, often saying they were the kind of family you'd see in commercials or heartwarming TV shows. Jonathan Candy was a 42-year-old man from Yukon, Oklahoma. Most people in the area knew him as the cheerful, funny guy who worked part-time at the Paycom Center, a popular arena where big events like concerts, basketball games, and other sports tournaments were held. It was the middle of another exciting basketball season, and Jonathan had recently been helping out during some of the Oklahoma City Thunder home games. Even though he wasn't a full-time employee, he brought so much energy to the place that coworkers said he could make the whole arena laugh with just one of his jokes. Jonathan had studied at Bishop McGuinness Catholic High School. After graduating, he eventually married his high school sweetheart, Lindsay Terry. Lindsay was a bright, fun-loving woman who grew up in Prague, Oklahoma. As a child, she was active in her church choir and was known for her sweet voice and constant laughter. Everyone described her as someone who lit up a room. And when she met Jonathan, the goofy guy who loved cracking jokes, the connection was instant. Their love story seemed straight out of a movie. He made her laugh, and she made him feel seen. They looked like the perfect match. As the years went by, the couple welcomed 4 sons into their lives: Dylan, Ethan, Lucas, and the youngest, who was 10 years old. From the outside, the Candy family looked picture perfect. Their social media pages were filled with happy snapshots, birthday celebrations, school events, holidays together. You could see the joy in their smiles and the bond they shared. Jonathan often told friends and family that his kids meant everything to him. He talked about them with pride, always saying how lucky he was to have such a wonderful family. That's why no one could have expected what happened next. On the morning of April 22, 2024, the Candy family's youngest son woke up in his bedroom like he did on any regular day. A box fan was humming by his bedside, blowing air in his direction, something that might have drowned out any noises from outside his room. The only thing he remembered was briefly hearing the fire alarm go off during the night. But it didn't seem serious at the time, so he fell right back asleep. Around 9 in the morning, the boy opened his bedroom door, expecting to see his family getting ready for the day. But instead, he walked into a nightmare. The house was silent, unnaturally silent, and then he saw it. Blood. Everywhere. Lying motionless on the floor were his mother, Lindsay, and his 3 older brothers, 18-year-old Dylan, 14-year-old Ethan, and 12-year-old Lucas. All of them had been shot. All of them were gone. Shocked and terrified, the 10-year-old quickly grabbed a phone and called 911. It was 9:30 in the morning when he calmly told the dispatcher something no child should ever have to say, that he had just found his entire family dead. Police and emergency services rushed to the home near Southwest 29th Street and Check Hall Road. Neighbors stood outside, confused and worried, as multiple police cars and ambulances arrived. They could never have guessed what had just happened next door. When officers entered the Candy home, they walked into a nightmare. It didn't take long for them to conclude that they were looking at a murder-suicide. The father, Jonathan Candy, had killed his wife and 3 of his sons, then turned the gun on himself. But he had left one child alive, his 10-year-old son. That decision raised haunting questions. Why had Jonathan killed everyone else but spared the youngest child? Why had a man who once proudly called his kids his whole life carried out such a devastating act?
Jess, many of the neighbors behind me tell me they were close with the Candy family. Whether it was a small wave in passing or the kids coming over to play with pets, they would have never expected Jonathan Candy would kill his family.
Him and his kids seemed like they always got along. He just was just a family man.
In an interview with Oklahoma officials, it was revealed that the scene inside the home was even more disturbing than initially reported. 2 of the victims were found upstairs, while the other 2 lay lifeless downstairs. Yet there were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no signs that anyone fought back. Everything about the crime scene pointed to one terrifying conclusion: the victims were caught completely off guard. This only deepens the mystery. In most murder-suicide cases, especially those involving an entire family, the outcome is tragically uniform. No one is spared. If the killer's intention is to take their own life after the murders, they usually kill everyone present. But Jonathan Candy didn't. He spared one, his 10-year-old son. And that single decision has left investigators and mental health experts with more questions than answers. Why did he do it? Did he come to his senses in that final moment? Did he have a particularly strong bond with this one child that made him hesitate? Or did he simply run out of resolve? Unfortunately, we may never get a clear answer to these painful questions. Jonathan Candy is gone, and so are his wife and 3 of their sons. And as for the little boy who survived, his relatives are doing everything they can to protect him. They've asked authorities not to involve him in further investigations, at least not now. The child has already experienced a level of trauma that no one, let alone a 10-year-old, should ever endure. Even though a year has passed, he's still just a child, and his emotional healing must come before anything else. Dr. Joni Johnston, a clinical and forensic psychologist involved in the case, shared her shock during a press briefing. She explained that in her decades of experience, she had never encountered a case where a parent killed multiple children but left one alive. She called the decision baffling and emotionally complex, adding that it raised far more questions than it answered. What made Jonathan pull the trigger 3 times, but stop short of pulling it a 4th? Friends and neighbors who saw Jonathan in the days leading up to the killings described him as his usual self. Nothing seemed off. There were no signs that he was overwhelmed or spiraling. His co-workers even recalled seeing him at the Thunder Versus Pelicans playoff game the night before the tragedy. He was laughing, joking, and doing what he always did, spreading good energy. If he was silently struggling, he hid it well. There were also no visible signs of domestic violence in the home. No reports of past abuse, no police visits, no red flags to suggest that the Candy household was anything but peaceful. That's what makes this case even more tragic. There were no obvious warning signs, no cries for help that neighbors or loved ones might have noticed. And yet, within a few hours, a family of 6 was reduced to 1 survivor. Investigators now believe that something may have happened between Jonathan and Lindsay on the night of the murders, perhaps an argument or a breaking point. It's been suggested that there was a disagreement, though no one knows exactly what it was about. But what could push a father, who was once seen as loving and devoted, to destroy everything he claimed to love? One theory being considered is that Jonathan may have killed his wife in the heat of an argument, an unplanned, explosive act. But then, faced with the aftermath, he panicked. In his twisted logic, he may have thought his children couldn't live with the trauma of knowing what he had done. And instead of calling for help or turning himself in, he chose the most horrific path, ending the lives of his sons before taking his own. Now, as investigators continue to unravel the tragic case of the Candy family, another heartbreaking possibility is being considered: mental health. Authorities are now questioning whether Jonathan Candy may have been silently battling an internal war, struggling with a mental health condition that he never spoke about. It's possible that he wore a mask so convincingly, no one, neither his friends, co-workers, nor even his family, noticed the storm brewing inside him. Mental health challenges in men often go unnoticed, not because they aren't there, but because they manifest differently. Unlike the more openly visible signs of emotional pain we often associate with depression, men tend to experience it in ways that are less obvious. Rather than cry or admit sadness, they may retreat inward. They isolate themselves. They become easily irritated, angry, or withdrawn. They stop engaging with loved ones, not out of spite, but because they no longer feel connected to the world around them. The problem, tragically, is that many people still view mental illness as a weakness, especially men. The stigma surrounding mental health discourages them from reaching out for help. They bottle it all up, believing they must tough it out. But without support or therapy, these emotional wounds grow deeper, more dangerous. At a certain point, some individuals fall into such a dark place that they begin to believe the world and their family would be better off without them. And worse, some believe they must take others with them when they go. Now, months after the tragic Candy family murders, shocking truths about their hidden struggles have finally come to light. As it turns out, the Candy family had been walking a tightrope, teetering under the weight of serious financial pressure. There were overdue bills, maxed-out credit cards, and growing debts that the couple could no longer hide. Behind closed doors, Jonathan was struggling. The pressure of trying to provide for a family of 6 on limited income had taken its toll on him. Although Jonathan had a part-time job at the Paycom Center, the irregular hours and modest pay were far from enough to meet their household needs. The Paycom Center, located in nearby Oklahoma City, is a major arena that hosts everything from NBA games and concerts to community events. Jonathan's role there, while giving him the chance to be around the excitement of Thunder basketball games and packed concerts, was not the kind of job that paid enough to support a large family. Part-time pay at the Paycom Center can vary widely depending on the role, ranging from about $17 per hour for administrative work to upwards of $30 an hour for more specialized roles like product design. Full-time positions may offer annual salaries starting around $44,000 and going up to over $130,000 for high-level roles like release management. But Jonathan was not in one of those high-tier positions. His job was more modest, likely seasonal or event-based, and lacked the financial consistency and benefits that come with a full-time role. While Paycom does offer a comprehensive compensation and benefits package for full-time staff aimed at promoting a good work-life balance, those perks often don't reach part-timers like Jonathan. Despite his cheerful attitude at work, The reality was that he was barely scraping by, and that growing financial burden weighed heavily on him. With every paycheck, he was doing his best to stretch the funds, cover essentials, and still find time to be present for his family. But it simply wasn't enough. In the privacy of his journal, discovered after the murders, Jonathan poured out his frustration. He wrote of feeling inadequate, like he was failing the very people he loved most. He felt disrespected in his own home and powerless as a provider. His words painted a picture of a man who had lost control, not just of his finances, but of his identity. He was crumbling inside, but to the world, he remained the goofy, dependable guy who always cracked a joke and lent a hand. Relatives described subtle changes in his behavior, things they dismissed at the time. He was more withdrawn, more distracted. The tension between him and Lindsay, once brushed off as typical marital stress, had become more noticeable. They weren't fighting loudly, but there was a coldness, a distance. And now, in hindsight, many wonder if those were the early warning signs of a man on the verge of a psychological break. It's not uncommon for financial strain to cause deep emotional wounds, especially for fathers who feel the immense pressure to hold it all together. But Jonathan never spoke openly about his struggles. And that silence may have been what sealed his fate and the fate of his family. Now Lindsay did what she could to support the family, but the cost of raising 4 boys, school supplies, clothing, groceries, medical bills, kept climbing. They kept up appearances, attending events and maintaining a sense of normalcy, but the emotional and financial toll was slowly grinding them down. The stress created growing tension between husband and wife. Relatives described their marriage as quietly strained, with arguments becoming more frequent in recent months. It wasn't the screaming, door-slamming kind of conflict that raises alarm. It was the kind that builds quietly, over time, sharp words, silences, and the kind of exhaustion that erodes a couple from the inside out. What makes this tragedy so haunting is how preventable it might have been. Had someone seen the signs, had he reached out, had the stigma around mental health not silenced him. But instead of asking for help, Jonathan bottled it all in until the pressure finally cracked him. He went from being a father, trying to hold his family together, to the man responsible for tearing it apart in the most irreversible way imaginable. On the other side of this heartbreak is Lindsay Candy, a woman remembered not just as a mother or wife, but as someone whose presence brightened every room she entered. One of her childhood friends, Cammie Cruz, shared memories on Facebook that painted Lindsay in the soft, joyful light that those who knew her cherished. They had grown up together, attended the same school, graduated in 2002, and stood side by side singing in their church choir. One memory Cammie shared touched everyone deeply. As little girls, she and Lindsay had once fallen asleep in a treehouse, completely unaware that their parents were frantically searching for them and had even called the police. In the end, what began as a terrifying night for their families turned into a funny memory that lasted decades. It was the kind of innocent story that revealed Lindsay's playful heart. Cammie described Lindsay as someone you could always pick up with right where you left off. She was the kind of friend who stayed, even in silence. She said Lindsay was deeply loved, not only by her family, but by the many people whose lives she touched. Her boys adored her, her friends treasured her, and her laughter was something people still hold on to. Their oldest son, Dylan Candy, was only 18. He had just graduated from Mustang High School in May 2023 and was full of dreams. He had a huge passion for music, especially drumming. Dylan was part of the school's marching band, and later he enrolled at Oklahoma Baptist University, joining the Bison Brigade, OBU's official marching band. He played the first bass drum, a complex role not usually given to freshmen. But Dylan had the skill, the drive, and the heart for it. Brian Stackhouse, director of athletic bands at OBU, shared that Dylan stood out not just because of his talent, but because of his joy. Even on rough days, Dylan was kind, respectful, and uplifting. A core memory Brian had was when Dylan was told he'd be performing a solo in the drum line. He was so excited that he literally couldn't sit still. That was Dylan, full of energy, always showing up, always giving his best. In his honor, Dylan's bass drum and uniform have been placed in a memorial display at the university. Then there was Ethan Candy, just 14, a ninth grader at Mustang North Middle School. Ethan was the athlete of the family, committed, passionate, and known for his talent in baseball. His coach, T.J. Armstrong, described him as a sweet candy man with a smile that lifted spirits. Ethan wasn't just a player, he was a teammate, a best friend, and a spark of joy.
At this point, I just wish the nightmare would be over. I wish it was all a bad dream, and that we would wake up and that they would still be here.
Armstrong said Ethan brought out the best in his own son, and that his loss is something their family still can't fully grasp. Ethan's friends, Cooper Armstrong and Wyatt Livy, have struggled to come to terms with the loss. A memorial bench is now being set up at the Mustang Youth Sports Complex in his memory. And then there was Lucas Candy, only 12. Lucas was a bright and lively kid at Meadowbrook Intermediate School. He loved being around people, especially during his brother's soccer practices. He played, laughed, and made new friends wherever he went. Lucas is remembered for his boundless energy and kind heart, just a kid full of life whose journey was cut far too short. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of all is the story of the one who survived. The youngest Candy child, just 10 years old. A child who, in the span of one night, lost his entire world. No mother, no father, no big brothers to look up to. His entire sense of safety and love gone. At an age where children should be learning multiplication and planning birthday parties, he's now grappling with trauma no child should ever face. He is now in the care of extended family members, and the community has come together with overwhelming love and support to help him heal. Social workers, grief counselors, and trauma experts are working closely with the family to ensure he receives the emotional and psychological care he desperately needs. A GoFundMe campaign has been set up to help with his education, daily care, therapy, and future opportunities. The response from the public has been nothing short of incredible. Donations, letters, messages of support, proving that this young boy is not alone. He is surrounded by love from both neighbors and strangers alike. Local station KF reported that Jonathan's relatives have also broken their silence, releasing a statement expressing confusion, heartbreak, and a desire for answers they may never find. One neighbor, 68-year-old Michael Burham, said he still finds it hard to believe that the Candy family is gone. He remembers the laughter, the conversations, the warmth. Brian Graham, another neighbor, remembered how helpful and friendly Jonathan was, the kind of guy who offered help without being asked. And yet, even people like him, who interacted with Jonathan regularly, never saw the storm brewing inside. Coach Armstrong said he chooses to remember Jonathan not as a killer, but as the thankful guy who gave hugs. His wife, Rhonda Armstrong, spoke fondly of Lindsay and the children, recalling how their visits would always light up her day. Lindsay, she said, was always the loudest cheer at Ethan's games, and she meant that in the best way possible. It's this very contrast, the warm, joyful image of the Candy family versus the cold truth of how their story ended, that makes the tragedy even harder to accept. Authorities have since used this case as an urgent call to action, to speak up, seek help, and break the silence. Mental health should not be hidden in journals or masked by fake smiles. This case proves how even the happiest-looking families might be struggling deeply inside. If there's anything we can learn from this tragedy, it's that everyone is going through something, whether we see it or not. It reminds us to check in on the people we love, to offer patience, kindness, and time, and most importantly, to break the stigmas that keep people suffering in silence. For those in the community, support groups and counseling services are now being made available to help process the grief. The Candy family may be gone, but their memory lives on in every life they touched and in every tear shed for them. We may never truly understand what happened that night, but we can honor their lives by doing better for those still here. As we close this chapter, we remember Jonathan, Lindsay, Dylan, Ethan, and Lucas Candy, a family once full of laughter, now remembered with tears. And we hold space for their youngest, the lone survivor, who carries the weight of this loss into the unknown future. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think really happened? Do you believe it was purely financial struggles that pushed him over the edge, or based on everything you've heard? Do you think there were deeper marital problems happening behind closed doors? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.